Welcome back to the Magma Classroom. This episode, we're continuing our stylized character design education journey, that's a mouthful, with professional designer and educator Udi Kalmanovitz. Over the past few episodes, Udi has been deep diving in simplifying the major aspects of a stylized character design. This episode, Udi will be combining all of these techniques and approaching in one focused lecture. This episode will be packed with precious creative gems, so stick around. Join the art space in the description and click the Canvas invite link to jump in and receive feedback from Udi during our session. So get your pens ready and we'll see you in the Canvas. What's up, Magma friends? Welcome back to Magma Classroom. We are here with our good friend Udi Kalmanovitz. Udi, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm excited for today. I feel like we're finally starting to play around.
Yeah, we are indeed. I know we had a little break and came back last week to continue this topic of character design. And you mentioned, talking today a bit about style and language and thinking about how to design heads with these aspects in mind. What would you have to say to this concept and how important it is to you?
So first of all, I'm going to be like demonstrating and focusing on heads only because it's like we only have that much time. So I felt like it would be like more straight to the point and easier to convey like the message. But like I feel that a lot of beginner artists, and not only beginners, like one of the main like challenges is to actually be consistent like in the style you're creating. Like sometimes like illustrators, like artists, they will, let's say, design a character or draw a character, and then when they need to draw the same character or even other character that belongs to the same narrative, the same world, they will find it hard to basically stay like in the same style, in the same visual language, and also like to be better at maybe like investigating and looking at other works and other designs and try to figure out like what makes this style what it is and how basically you kind of decipher the code to a certain style. So I feel like today will be packed of gems, and yeah, I'm
I
sure
love
that I
that. I
will
love the
enjoy it.
description. You go ahead and take off, but I just want to say I love that description because it does feel like you are decoding something that is unknown that is learned and will become known if you follow this path.
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of complex, but I'll try to simplify it as much as I can. So basically, if we look at that like a certain image or a certain drawing, it will be composed of like several different elements. So let's say we got line, right? We got the line, and line can mean so much things. So let's say that you're looking at a drawing, or like maybe you have a TV series that you like, a game that you like, and you try to like copy that style. So even if you're focusing only on line, there is so many things to look at. Like we can look at the weight of the line, like the thickness. Is it one unified thickness to the line like we see in most of animations, or is it like goes like a dynamic line that goes from thick to thin? And it goes like so much deeper than that. Let's say it's a dynamic line and it goes from thick to thin. Where does it go thin and where does it go thick? Because a lot of times that like choice or that like decision for the artist that makes the line, it won't be completely random. It's not just like, okay, I have a pen pressure and whenever I like push less it goes thin, and whenever I push stronger it goes thick. It's not only that. Like the thickness of the line can convey so many things. It can convey motion, it can convey different materials. Let's say that I decide that like soft materials like fabric, plants, leaves, feathers, they will all get like very thin lines. And like more solid materials like wood, maybe rock, stone, will get a thicker line. So it maybe convey material. It maybe convey the light source. Maybe I decide that when I draw a shape, the line goes thicker where the shadow is. So it actually can convey the direction of light of our light source. So it can convey so many things, and it also can be combination of a few. So I will share a story like quickly. When I was like about 20 something, long time ago, um, I was really into like some of the Udon comics. Specifically, I like the Street Fighter comics, um, and I always try to copy like the style of the line work there. Um, and I consider myself a beginner back then. And then I actually read like a small piece in one of the comic pages from the inker that did the line art for this specific piece, and he said something so interesting, and it actually brought me to the way I look at style today. Because it said something that I would never figure out on myself, obviously not back then. So he actually did something that is quite opposite to a lot of what people do. I will do something like very quickly. So there is obviously a lot of anatomy going on in these comics. Like all the characters are super muscular. Um, so let's draw like a quick bicep flex right here. Okay, so let's say we got something like that. And now I'm about to draw the lines. And like I think like when you think thick to thin, it most of the time the intuitive approach is to actually make the line thicker when you have a peak, like where the object or the shape has like a peak. When I say a peak, it means that if I look at the curve, I'm looking at where the curve is bending the most. You can try to imagine like a ruler, like a plastic ruler, and if you bend it, you try to figure out where it will break. So that will be our peak. So most of the time, the more natural thing is to be, let's turn this stabilizer because I will go slow and really shaky. So the intuitive approach will be to start thin and go thick, and then thin, and then go thick again, and then thin. And basically, what we're doing is that we're making the peaks like thicker. And I think it's intuitive. It's because like you want to make those things like really pop, really bold. It's like you try to make them like more intense. Uh, but this artist, he actually did the opposite. What he did, he said, I'm looking at the muscle like it's like pushing through the skin, it's pushing through the tissue. And that means wherever this muscle stretches, I have like a very thin layer, like it stretches, it pushes through this tissue. So the tissue becomes thinner where the muscle is pushing the most. So we actually did the opposite. He make like the all the dents, all the valleys thicker, and the peaks were actually thinner, and it created like a different feeling from like what I've like tried to study back then when it comes to line art and inking in comics. Um, so basically, started thick, and he went very thin. He went very thin when he reached those peaks. Excuse my shaky lines. I just finished the workout.
It happens, you know.
It happens, yeah. That would be like challenging today. Uh, so it basically went like very thick, where he had those valleys, and in the peaks, he actually make it thinner. And then what happens like naturally with that approach is that not only it kind of gives the muscle really like organic feeling of pushing through the tissue, by actually making the valleys, like those dents between the muscles, is like thicker. It actually, I felt it makes like the anatomy pop a little more. And it also kind of gives like this ambient occlusion effect where you have peaks and you have dents, so things tend to be a little bit darker there. um, so for me, like I remember like reading this and I said to myself back then, man, I would never think about it like myself, even looking and trying to figure out and study like the way he worked. um, and then basically back then it brought me to the realization that you you can convey so many things like only using lines, and it's kind of like creating a code. Like for like let's say that I'm going like thick to thin, and I'm trying to like actually uh, like how do you say, like mark bold those dents. And also I'm taking into consideration the light source a little bit, and also I'm taking to consideration perspective, and that means that things that are getting closer, getting a little bit like bigger weight lines. uh, and then it's like a layer of information over a layer of information that basically um, brings me to the end result and to the way I decide to render my lines. So that like it's like just a tiny bit like the way that I think, only when it comes to line. And like the same way of thought goes to also looking at shapes, also looking at different values and color choice. And when it comes to shapes, let's go talk about shapes a little bit. When it comes to shapes, it can go even much more complex than that. So let's say that if I'll talk with someone about style and shapes, so probably the first thought that will pop to mind is like the actual shape that someone is using. Like if he uses like a triangle to draw a shape of a head or something. So I'm not talking about only like using like the actual shape. It's the shape combination. What shapes do I combine with different shapes? And also, it can actually be like the transition between lines and between the different shapes that makes the something like stick. And what I mean by that is that if you see like in certain style you have like very sharp angles, very sharp corners, so maybe you got like the same overall shape, but one will do this shape like this, and in other style you will see the same shape, and it's like we shaved the edges, the points a little bit. And I still consider those to be the same shapes. I know someone can say, no, it's a totally different shape because this one have, it's the same different shapes. Like for me, this like choice of making the shape a little bit sharper in points, it's sometimes something you will do even like without thinking when you're drawing. It can be also like a style decision or like a personal where you have like personal aesthetics that you prefer and drawn to without even thinking. So you can see someone maybe drawing, um, let's say someone is drawing like a piece of clothing, and it can actually approach this piece of clothing kind of differently just because of the way that he thinks. And even when I'm sketching, I'm trying to actually think of try to think of like putting the lines like after. But even when I'm sketching, I'm making decisions like without even like intending. But let's say that we have like a piece of clothing, and like two different artists, even especially if the sketch is like very loose. So if the sketch is very loose, that means like that the line artist basically can make more decisions. He is the one interpreting how the final line should look. And then maybe someone will do like the same thing, the same shapes, but he will see a corner and he will think of like cutting the corner like very sharply and like leaving like tiny points and edges and stuff like that. So like even working this way, it's already creating like a style decision, a visual language decision. And let's do it like in two different layers. So if I'm working this way, then probably the other side will need to look similar in the way we approach those different layers, or so those different folds, or I can all of a sudden decide that I want to approach things where they look a little bit or feel a little bit softer. But it's not like that I change material all of a sudden. It's not like, okay, I want to make it softer because it's the same material. Like this is already like a different way to interpret stuff. Um, so when I'm talking about shapes, it's more subtle than actually like seeing the big shapes. And I'm not talking about like right now the proportions. We're going like small, big, medium, and try to like get the overall proportion and shapes of the character, which is obviously part of the style. But I'm talking a little bit about more subtle things, that where you actually see like different shape decisions inside the lines and inside like areas where an artist cuts angles and transition from one line to another, from one plane to another plane. So those are artistic and style decisions as well. And
Hey,
on
Udi,
top,
just one quick thing, because I noticed a few
sure.
people drawing in here. If anybody is listening to this, which hopefully everybody is, some people do make it to the canvas without catching the stream. Um, if you turn on the sequence panel real quick,
Sure.
just want to make sure people can see. We have participant canvases to the right for people to be drawing on. So I'm just pinging a few people in the chat right now with links. So I saw Sociopath looked like you wanted to draw. Anybody else, Juki, if Juki you want to draw, I'll go ahead and send you an invite too. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead,
No,
Udi.
it's all good. It's all good. That will be great if we, in the end of our session, have some things to look at. That will be awesome. Um. So yeah. So another thing, if we think about like different decisions in shapes, lines, we can also talk about like distribution. And what I mean by distribution, let's say that you noted a specific thing that an artist does in a certain style. That means that he used like I don't know. Let's say he cut a corner and gives like a sharp angle to a shape somewhere. Then basically you can look at the rest of the piece, the rest of the character, and try to figure out like how many times is this like pattern repeating itself, and what kind of like distribution, or like how scattered it is or how dense it is. What I mean by that, let's say I will give example by actually drawing later, but I will do something fairly like simple just to get the point across. So let's say that I'm looking at a painting and I'm seeing something, and like that circle will symbolize that something, whatever it is. It can be a thick line, it can be like a sharp corner, it can be like a something that makes the style. It can be like a few lines to give some texture or some shading, whatever it is. And then I'm looking at the overall piece, whatever it is, maybe it's a character, and I'm trying to figure out where do I see it again. Like, let's say I see it again here, and I see it again here, and I see it again here. So then I'm saying, okay, it's kind of like very like spaced from one another and very evenly spread. Maybe I I detect a certain pattern, and then I see it's like really dense in a certain place, and it's like really like spaced and scattered in a different place. So I'm trying to think, okay, so what's going on? What's going on in this area that this artist decided to make these things like more um, to appear more in that certain area. Okay, so we can also talk about like that the spreading of patterns. So basically patterns, it's all it is that you're trying to detect. So that means that if we talked about lines, we talked about shapes, we talked about like different subtle things inside those shapes and the transition and blending of shapes. You also want to see like how repeating it is, and like how spread it is like over the character, and if it's like it's really repeating itself. Is it something that comes like every now and then? If there is an area where the artist used this pattern that you detect like more, and other areas that he uses it less. So I think like overall, when you try to figure out like a certain style, for me, anyways, it's easier to actually try to try to study every one of those aspects like separately. So I will look like I will grab I don't know, I will see a new TV series which I will like the style, and I will look at the art, and I'll go, what they did with those lines, and I will focus only on the lines. And I will try to think about the thickness. Maybe the line has like different colors, and I will try to figure out what software maybe did they use even, because that sometimes like you see like some like style of lines will actually be easier created with some tools and not other tools. So I'll try to think about those lines and what do I see, and like what was the reasoning behind like different decisions, and only then I will say, okay, what did they do with the shading? Where is the light source? What like how much contrast? This one is a big one. How much contrast do they have between the shadow color and the light color? So let's say we're talking about like stylized character for animation. So a lot of times when we see characters for animation, we have like only, let's say, like two colors for most materials, right? So we do something like a cell shading, where you basically have like this really sharp like line between that like really sharp borders between light and shadow. And let's do something like fairly, let's say that I'm picking some kind of a skin tone here, and I'll give myself like a quick solid to go over. So let's say that you basically are looking at like a certain style, and you're trying to figure out colors that they are using. So like figuring out the colors, if you also looking for patterns, it's not only if they use like warm colors, cool colors, a certain palette, which is also something like to look at. Like is the shade color is cooler, how much cooler it is. Uh, but one thing is to actually try to get the contrast. And what I mean by that is that most of the time, if like mm, let's click, okay. Most of the time, if I see like a cell shading art, it will have like a certain amount of contrast between the shadow shapes and the light areas. And this amount of contrast will actually mostly go on all different characters, all different objects, sometimes even parts of the background. So, what do I mean by that? Let's say that you're trying to create the same style and you pick similar colors, but like your shadow is like really darker than like in comparison to what like the style is using. um, then it will already look kind of different. So if I'm actually, let's go and take like a quick shadow color, make it a little bit cooler. That's a nice one. So if I'm thinking, okay, I got me like this, creating like a quick shadow layer.
Dang it. I was helping people in the chat and all of a sudden you got texture and shading looking good.
So what I was saying is like, let's say that I use like a certain color for these shadows. So what am I looking at is not like not only the shapes or where did I put like those shadows. I'm also trying to look at the amount of contrast. And that's something you can actually take a drawing and convert it to a grayscale image and try to also look at it as a grayscale image. So it sometimes will actually be easier to figure out what is the amount of contrast between those two values, like the shadow values and the light value. Um, and basically what you want to do is, once you see like a certain style uses a certain values, you kind of want to mimic that if you want to work in the same style. And obviously, if you are creating something, let's say you're creating one character, I think like sometimes people can do it not knowingly. They can create one character and then they will create another character that's supposed to go along with the first one, and then they are starting rendering the second character, and they're like going intuitively. They're picking a like a solid color for, let's say, the shirt at the top, and then they're choosing intuitively like a shadow color, not knowing or not paying attention that they didn't create like the same amount of contrast between those two values as the contrast they did or achieved in the first character. So that is something to look. It's like the this like contrast amount can actually make something look like it doesn't belong inside the scene. So when I'm looking basically at colors when I'm drawing, then I'm thinking of like actually the attributes of the color. So that means like if colors are going, let's say, cooler or warmer when they go from shadow to shade. And I'm also looking at the amount of contrast, and I try to figure out also if like there is a certain like color scheme that basically governs the entire piece. So that's not always the case. Like you'll see some artists, especially in animation, I feel that they will create things like more in their like what we call the native color, where is the color associated with a certain object. So the tree top is green and the tree trunk is brown, and an orange is orange and a banana is yellow, right? But you will see that some like pieces of art, they get like this greater atmosphere and mood to a scene, and some, maybe a scene is like completely blues and greens, and then the that means that there is more going on than just the native color, and there is probably like a greater color scheme governing the entire piece. So it is also something that worth mentioning. So basically, like, maybe do like a quick summarization of like like, we can take this explanation and probably make a course of this subject, because you can really go in depth about line and about color and about shapes. But like, the bottom line of what I'm saying is, try to think of all the different aspects that create an image, and try to find patterns in each and every aspect. And those patterns coming along together would basically create the art that you're looking at. But yeah, it can get really complex. So I think it's like, probably, for me, more logical approach than just observing and trying to um, like copy what you're seeing just from observation. Because that means that if you will need to actually create something that in that same style, but it's something different that you can't copy, then you will have less to go off on. So that's probably will be the first thing. And I will actually go off that and give like maybe our viewers another tip that actually started for me from the same, like, from the same subject, and that's like the way you work with references. So I feel like that a lot of students of mine, anyways, a lot of times they are being like really confused from the reference they are gathering. And what happens is that, like, a student gets like an assignment, he gets a brief, and he needs to design a character. And then basically what he does, he starts to collect references. And when he collects references, he collects like different pieces of art that he likes, that there is something in the aesthetics of that piece that he likes. And sometimes those are totally different things, and he's not aware of it. So he look at the piece of art and he say, oh, this is amazing, but maybe he lacks just the composition. Maybe he likes the lighting. Maybe he likes the color choice. Maybe he likes the style of rendering. Maybe he likes the shape language. Maybe he likes the character itself. So those are all different things. And sometimes when you gather references, and those references are in different styles, they can pull you in different directions. So you are trying to do something consistent and like create a certain style, but because you're looking at different references in different style, they're all pulling you different places, and then your piece will end up to be less consistent. You can suddenly see that like the face or the arm is looking in a certain way, and the leg is looking in a different way, or whatever, because we are looking at different things. So what I suggest on doing when collecting references is actually to divide the references into different domains. So let's say you're picking references only for the coloring. So you collect several pieces that you can like different things about those pieces, but you knowingly collect them for reference to the colors you want to use. And that means they will probably look the same with the color choices. And maybe you do a folder of references only for the shape language, the style of the shapes, then you will have probably references of characters that are similar in their shapes and in their style. And you will have different folder for references for, I don't know, maybe anatomy, or references maybe for lighting or whatever. But you kind of know and divide those references to certain domains so they won't pull you in different directions. So what thought that I will try to do today, kind of like an exercise or just like a play, is that maybe creating a certain head and try to basically create the same head few times, and every time to change things a little bit and go in different styles. And that's a fun one. So let's hide these things right here and create a new layer. I can't draw humans. So draw creatures, man. Just draw.
Yeah.
Draw creatures. I actually have a sticker like right in front of me here next to my computer. It's like a skull, and it says on top of that skull, draw stuff. I got it from an artist that I really like.
That's
Draw
awesome.
stuff. Yeah, that's the best advice you can give. Draw stuff.
Which definitely.
Um, so um, I thought of maybe creating a certain character and then try to create this character in different style. I didn't have like a an idea in mind, so I'll probably just try to roll with it. And let's go with like I don't know, maybe. So I'm thinking like maybe like a warrior or Viking because I like. Mm-mm-mm. And let's make him. So I'm thinking of. I mentioned the Street Fighter comics earlier, so I'm thinking of like the character of Akuma, and then I'm thinking, what if he had like maybe a son or something? How will he look? Okay, so let's say that this is our character, and I probably I probably did something that is like more comfortable and more in like my comfort zone for this one, but I'll try to do different things and kind of play around with it. So let's just make it a little bit smaller. It's right here. So basically, if you have a certain idea and you want to try different styles, like the main thing like to keep in mind is that there is some kind of some attributes in a character that makes this character what it is. And these attributes are not only like the shape of the hair or the clothing or accessories. Those are some things that like also in the structure of the character that really makes it what it is. So like obviously if I want to create this character in a different style, then I will go with the same ponytail and like the same hair, and will pick those like big beads necklace. But probably some physical attributes are also very important that will like I won't get like the same character if I ignore them. So that will probably be the mean look on his face and all those like folds between the eyebrows and the shape of the eyebrows. And like I can see that it has like pretty wide mouth and like kind of a thick lips. So if I'm drawing in a style where I actually put those like details in, like draw the lips, then I should probably keep his lips thick. And he's got like this major chin popping out, and like really like this very intense shape to the joint, the chin. So that also kind of what makes him what he is. So I'll probably try to keep that as well. um, he also have like a certain build and like a wide neck. So there's a few things that I will try to like just keep it there. So let's say that I'm going like to like really extreme and to something that is very cartoonish, and maybe something that uses like round shapes and like very childish, very cartoonish, and I want to get the same character. And I will actually do it twice, because I will try to give like a one example where I look only at like the more obvious stuff. So let's say I'm creating like a very round shape and like a very round ear, and I'm doing something like this. And I'm already like doing something very um, like very cartoonish, very simple. And I didn't put like the pupils there in the eyes. So, but in this style, I would probably put the pupils. And if I decide to not put them, I would probably just give like little eyelids so we can tell his eyes are open and wide. So maybe let's put it like that. And maybe I will give him like a very angry look, and um, a tiny nose, and it will be really unhappy. So right now, I definitely change styles dramatically, but do I get the feeling that I'm looking at the same character? Probably not. And obviously, with this style, it won't be. the same drawing, it won't be the exact same character, but it doesn't have the same characteristics like to it. So it's not only like going with the necklace and hair, which is like the more obvious things. So let's try to keep like in the same realm of this style, but make it like more similar to the character that we're drawing. So what if I'll go with the same shape, but I'll say, but let's put this chin there. Let's keep this chin there. And I can go with the round ear. I don't see any reason why not. And of course the hair. And I will give the same eyes, because like in this case, these like big round eyes are obviously like big part of the style of what it is. So I will give him like those round eyes once more. And maybe I'll make them go like diagonally to make it like more evil, like more intense. And like with the eyebrows, I probably won't go like that, because I feel it doesn't belong to the visual language. Like the shapes are much simpler and they don't go into that much detail of starting. Like we can't do that. But maybe I will go like and I'll say, I see like this part of the eyebrow is thin, and this part of the eyebrow is thick. So maybe I'll try just to go like from thick to thin and see how it looks, and make it like more intense, and maybe even like give a small dent here. So that already looks like that much more intense. And maybe I will create the nose a little bit smaller, and maybe I will put the lips there, but I will put like the lips like in a funny shape to it. So the lips are still thick. Mm, try that again. Like I want to go with the lips so that they will still be thick, but like fit like the overall style. Maybe something like that. And here I will go probably like, I feel that if I will just give him like a thick neck, it probably look not fitting the style, because like the style is really exaggerated. Like the thin neck is like really thin, so maybe the thick one is like really thick. It's like even thicker than the regular one, or the one we did like initially. So probably I will do something like that, and maybe I will even exaggerate and like pop a vein here or something like that. So obviously this is not the same drawing, but it is like has the same characteristics of the first character, which is like, if I want this character to feel like really massive and really powerful, so this character will obviously look very massive. This one will look like it can put a spell on us or something. It has like its mystique, but it doesn't give like this, like I'm jacked and I'm like a big dangerous strong character to it. So those things are obviously important as well, and not only look at the cosmetics and like the clothing and accessories, which are very important. Maybe let's do uh, let's do one more. So I'll get rid get rid of this one, and let's take this one right here. Let's put it here. And let's do something else. So why not trying to go with something that is like more stylized, but not as cartoonish or as that stylized. So maybe we talked a little bit about line and angles and transition between shapes. So what if we'll do something like that? I will actually create a very similar shape to the head, but I will go differently about like the details, and we'll make it like more like angular, and that will already change the style itself. So the entire style. So let's say that I have like this character here, and now let's go with sharper lines and like less details, like maybe more animated, serious like a really really good example to actually see different changes in like in shape language is like maybe if our viewers will want to check out like the Mutant Ninja Turtles, they had like the 3D series and how they are like or the previous 2D series and how they were like designed there, and then one of the latest one where like they change a little bit like the characters, Raphael became like this big giant like turtle, and they went like really simplified and really cartoonish, and there were like really edgy decisions in the style. So that's actually a great example of seeing the same characters being drawn differently with like very small decisions that are really change the style. So even here, if I'm going and doing like the ponytail, I'm trying to it's like repeating the same notes. It's like if someone from our viewers also maybe plays an instrument, so you can think of it as notes to a song, to a composition. And like if you're listening to music and you have like all of a sudden a new note that appears that you hear, and it doesn't repeat itself again, then it will look like foreign, it will sound foreign. But like usually when you hear a certain sound, it repeats every couple of beats, right? Like every now and then you hear that sound again. So like if you look even at what I'm doing right now, like already you can see that like this like corner right here repeats itself here, repeats itself here. It repeats itself like in a lot of different places. This is like a choice that I'm making, and I'm trying to repeat like this transition. And it's not that like all of those, like some of those lines are rounded, and some of the things like the necklace or whatever, they will be rounded. But like whenever I make like this kind of like 90-degree turn, I try to make it sharper. Um, and this is like a pattern that I'm establishing. Now let's go with the eyes. So I'll probably like here create something like that, and also make those eyes like so. Like with the eyes, I'm actually thinking of making them fairly like the eyebrows fairly round, and then with the eyes themselves, I'll probably go with like a simple shape, maybe a triangle, making it like. And I'm still trying to figure out or decide how I want to uh, convey the mouth. in this style. I'll probably put like very thin line here to show the lips and to show those like thick lips, but I'll probably won't like actually make a strong stroke around it, and maybe even go and add like a small dent in the jaw right here. So yeah, so this is like same character, maybe like more stylized, animated like style. Let's put it here somewhere. And let's go create another one. So I'm trying to think like maybe on something different, maybe going with something that is a little bit more like retro, um, and something that will look like a bit like an old animation or something. So right now I'm thinking like maybe like Popeye. I'm thinking like the shape of Popeye, but I will try to make like some adjustment to it. So like I want this short nose. Like I'm thinking that the shape of the nose is maybe too different. Like it's really pointy, and maybe it takes it to a different direction. I might change it later. And I'm trying to think if I want to show the lips like in this one. So like even here, I'm trying to kind of like even that I'm taking like the same similar shape for the ponytail. I'm thinking that like probably I would break it to different pieces of hair a little bit, and also go full blast with the neck. So maybe something like that. Maybe change the nose shape a little bit so it won't look like that witchy. Kind of like this one.
I do too.
Thanks, brother.
There's been I've been in the background. There's a lot of conversation, a lot of activity going on with the sequence panel, with people making contributions while you're working. And as I look up, I see these two different variations. Both very much do feel in alignment. I'm curious to know, do you feel, when you deconstruct a very detailed shape down to something more angular, like the one towards the bottom middle, how did you develop the methods to kind of figure out how to shape these things. Because you can look at, like I think we've talked about this before. Like if you look at Jafar, like
Mhm.
the like certain like villain characters will have they all there's like a playbook, and there's only so many of them that you kind of tend to see. Do you find that like there's room for experimentation? Like how do you get to this place where you figure out what's the right way to handle the curves in that
I,
regard?
that's a great question. First of all, I feel that today it's really hard to invent something new. Like it's really, really hard. Like you try, even when you mix all those things that you like absorbed along the years and you mix them together and try to put something new, it probably already, even if you're not copied anything, it probably looks similar to something that exists. Um, and with characters in particular, I feel like that actually you make it easier on yourself. It's like a choice, but you make it easier on yourself if instead of inventing something new every time, that you will accept kind of the fact that there is like a certain stereotypes that they keep repeat like this. It's like a typecast. It's like
Yeah,
when you have an actor that is always like get the same kind of roles.
totally.
Like, if you take Morgan Freeman, he's always be like this smart, respectable, whatever. And if you take, I don't know who, like there is a certain roles for like specific actors. So, and there are certain roles that repeat themselves in movies and in stories and in animation, and those roles are basically, they ask for a certain character. So why
Right.
not give like the story, the character that he asks for? So if you take, let's take like a Pixar movie for example, and then if you take like a Brave, so you have the princess, but if you actually look at the father, like the father of the princess, I don't recall the name, but he's like this big rectangle with arms and legs. He's like this giant. He has like this giant shape and very, very like short legs, and he's like very, he's massive, right? He
Hmm.
has like his beard, and you have like, so you kind of have like this type of character in every other Pixar film in one way or another. So it's like it's a stereotype that repeats itself. And next to him, you will have like maybe someone that is thinner, and it actually is not like there by chance, is actually there thinner to
Hmm.
give contrast to the first character, to the other character. So those characters are kind of contrasting and completing one another. And I feel like if you actually take note of those different stereotypes, then you actually make it easier on yourself, because you can approach like a project and you can actually tell yourself, okay, I need like the leader, which will be like this handsome, ideal proportioned, I don't know, fellow. And
Yeah.
then I need also like the big muscular guy, and I need like the smart guy, and I need like someone that, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing. And like when you deal with certain like especially villains, there are a few things that you want to keep in mind. Like th- uh, there are villains like that are kind of like the bizarro version of the hero. So that means that villain is also like handsome and on his evil. But like if we take Jafar type villains, then basically you want to keep in mind a few things. You want to create shapes that will be efficiently far apart from the shapes and proportions that we know in actual humans. So that means that it's like we have a mechanism in our brain. Like I sometimes I tell my students, like imagine that if you woke up one day and you go to brush your teeth and then you look at the mirror and your like eyes will be just like 1 inch higher than they are right now, you will get totally freaked out.
Yeah,
So, right?
definitely.
Yeah, and other people will freak out as well. It's not that you will look a little bit different, you will look different.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is that you want to actually try to avoid like the normal distribution of like features, and that will already like kind of gives the brain a cue there is something wrong with this character, I don't trust it. So that's one thing. And the other thing is to actually use those kind of like more edgy, pointy shapes sometimes. Like if you look at Jafar, like even like the way you will cut the shape of the eyebrow, and I don't mean the hair of the eyebrow, I mean like the actual bone, like the actual like silhouette of the face. So like things will get like pointier and angular. And also one more important thing is the silhouette of the character. So most of the time if you look like on the like heroes or normal characters, when you look at the silhouette you see a silhouette of a person. And like with those villains a lot of time, like the mega villains, when you look at the silhouette there are shapes that will break the silhouette to make it something that is not that familiar to us. um, and I feel like those are few important things
Yeah.
um, to keep in mind. But like you can take Jafar. That will actually be interesting. You can take Jafar and try to put the Jafar and make him like in different styles, and probably I will try to keep like a few things, like to keep them even when I transition from style to style, not change them.
Hmm.
The distribution is one of them. Like distribution is a lot. Uh, let's imagine that you have like, let's create a new layer. Like imagine that you have, let's draw like a quick face, and I will do like this face. Let's create like a monster face. So let's say I have like this creepy monster right here, and it's kind of cute. And
Yeah.
let's say I have this monster right here, and even even so that it's a monster, it kind of like very humanoid and humanly spread, like the eyes, the distance between the eyes, the mouth, and like all the features. It's like a human. Like if I give him regular eyes, regular ears, and keep everything like in the same place, is like turning to a normal human. So if we take this like creature and try to play around with the placement of things, that will probably make a huge difference. So what let's say if I'll take the eyes right now together with the nose and like just bring them up a little bit, so I need to probably, okay, so let's bring him up a little bit like that. So for me, that already give him like a small line here. That already looks like much creepier. Like he's looking like the normal sweet son of this guy. Um, and like the reasoning behind it is like very simple. If we actually ignore the eyes and like the features, if we ignore all of the things, you get like eyes here, nose here, mouth here, instead of like eyes here, nose here, and mouth here. So even if I'll take like this layer, like this look already like a normal person, and here something like is wrong with like the structure of the face, like with the normal proportions that we know. So that is something to keep in mind when drawing like those villains or
Would it be safe to say then that that relationship with what is comfortable based on what you see is safer for a relatable, safer character, say a hero or somebody that you like, versus a villain or somebody that you're intended to maybe not like? I guess that's always subjective, though. That's not necessarily the case for everything. But the idea is that the unfamiliar can be a bit scarier. And so in thinking about that in your design is kind of crucial, depending on the type of character that you want. Like the Street Fighter character you're drawing here, although he is a bit intimidating, obviously the chin and all of that is a bit angular. The structure of the face is more human and I guess normalized in a way. So
Mhm.
the angular features, I guess that comes down to, I guess when you want realism, more aspects of realism, you're not really able to change the structure too much, because then it becomes unreal. So stylized characters, you can do this. More real characters, you have to be more creative with the way that you mess around with certain features, like angles of the jaw, definition of the chin, and the way that it comes out just slightly. That still, that could be a person. That there's probably people that have. I mean, I think about like Jay Leno is a great example of a person who has a big chin, and that's a characteristic of his features that is in reality a thing. So
And also like Jay Leno is a great example. Like people that has like this like a major like characteristic to their face or something to their bodies, they're kind of like they are characters. Like if you take like 10 group of a group of 10 men, okay, you pick 9 men like randomly for this from the streets, and then you take Jay Leno, he will be the 10th, and you will mix them together and tell them to go with the line, and you will actually try to tell someone who is like the person that makes the most impression, who will he remember the most, who will get his attention. And there is a good chance that between those 10 men, Jay Leno takes it. You know,
yeah,
you said Jay Leno. When I'm thinking about like Big Chin, like Jay Leno, you had like in the pro wrestling in the old days, you had the Sergeant Slaughter, and you
yeah,
had
yeah.
Jesse Ventura also got
Yep.
a chin there. So yeah,
The
you get like those, and but you know what, like regarding what you said, I feel like the changing the jaw, especially in a stylized domain, changing the jaw, changing the skull, is not as extreme as changing the spacing and relationship between the features. So I feel like the relationship between the eyes, like the width of both eyes together, and the nose, and then the mouth, and like the spacing between of them, I feel like this is something that is actually can be more extreme if you change it than the actual shape of the skull.
mm,
So I think like here, like with this like monster here, you see that it has like kind of a regular head shape, but it's like the movement of the features that makes him non-human and like more monstrous. And like with this guy over here, you can tell that man is like has like this big jaw, and obviously it's not realistic, but it's kind of like humanoid, and it doesn't look like very monstrous or very. So probably if I wanted to create, let's say I get like a feedback on that character, and they tell me that we want them to look like more, I don't know, more dark, or more like maybe as like some kind of mystic, evil, dark magic powers, whatever. Then I would probably try to play with those distribution, with those relationships a little bit more to make something like really off there. And also, Another thing to keep in mind is to play with symmetry and try to avoid symmetry with like if those characters are like those mega villains. So we usually they won't be symmetrical. So feel free to make one eye bigger than the other, or one eyebrow taller, or whatever, or like the mouth going in an angle, and that will also can help.
Yeah, those are good tips. I love that. Speaking of tips, Artist Sane had a question. And for someone who's struggling with starting a project, drawing, or painting due to being a perfectionist, which I think is many, many people out there, what would your advice be to something like that?
Hmm. Actually, I think like when you're a perfectionist, like you have like most of your challenges will be in the beginning. You will have challenges all the way, but most of them will be in the beginning, and I'll say why. It's because when you're starting with nothing, and you try to make things perfect in your first few lines. So you can just do like a few quick lines, and you already racing. You're already doing it again and again. Maybe you're doing undo, redo, and you go all over again. And you can't even like get out of like the starting line, and because you're judging yourself too early. So I feel like um, a good idea is to try to work in like different, let's say, stops for yourself, like different stations. So let's say you actually define that what you're doing right now, you're not doing a painting, you're not doing a drawing, you're doing step one. And step one is actually creating a very, very loose sketch without going to any details. Like get the general idea of what you want to create, and make make a habit, make it a goal to make this sketch loose and messy and not erase. And 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 if you actually make it a goal, you kind of free yourself from trying to perfect it while you create it. Don't perfect it while you create it and slowly perfect it. So that will be the first thing. I think like being very loose when you're starting to get your ideas rolling is key. And just like tell yourself, I don't start with the drawing, I start with step one, which is like being very loose with the sketch. And then let's say you turn the opacity down if you work digitally, and you start like cleaning up the sketch a little bit. Then you're still loose, but you just give another layer of information, but you still try to keep it very loose. And then what you do then is actually you go to the final, let's say, line art or cleanup. And I'm still talking not about colors and stuff, like getting the actual drawing. Then you can be perfectionist. Take your time. If it takes you longer, then it will take you a little bit longer, but you already got like the character done, like the character is there. Then you can be perfectionist when you create like the final line drawing.
Yeah.
um, so I feel that that's okay. like being perfectionist like really hinders you in the beginning when you can't like get things off and start rolling.
Yeah. No, that's good advice. And I would add, not to say that I'm the expert on this, but I can relate because I've kind of been plagued with that aspect of perfectionism in too many aspects of my life. And I've come to realize that you can't not be a perfectionist. You can't undo that. But what you can do is reframe the way that you think about what a perfectionist is and how it can be a utilized skill if thought about in the right ways. And that, I think, to your advice, Udi, in that, you're starting with step one. Ultimately, I mean, think about, I just rewatched a couple times the Stan Lee documentary, and they're getting into Jack Kirby and some of these guys, and how some of them are and were perfectionists in the creative process and developing character design and things like that, and yet they had this ability to deliver what they did. I mean, they developed Marvel Comics stylization the Marvel way. That was it's a recipe, it's a methodology. And so how do those perfectionists achieve that status? The only way is to follow the structure. You cannot skip from step 0 or 1 to 6 or 7 and just polish and finalize that piece. The only path is to really understand the essentials at the beginning, and part of the perfectionist process is developing the idea quick and rough. It's not going straight to the final result. And until you can master that part, there doesn't really seem to be a path forward unless I have seen some folks, that have photographic memory or just have this like innate ability to just put something down without any real like ideation, or they just kind of get to it. They're like the 0.0001% of people. But for the rest of us, it seems to be just a reframing of the way that you think about it. Because like I said, I've tried to not be perfectionist and go, oh, I just won't care about it. Doesn't work. I always come back and I just fester over it, and then ultimately it leads to not doing anything because there's frustration, and that frustration just
So,
cannot get in the way.
so I think like drawing the Marvel way is a great example, and you talked about structure and like. So I'll say something like for that will go off what you said. Like, let's say that you divide like creating an image, a drawing from imagination. You're designing something. Let's say you divide it into two aspects. You have like the fundamental aspects of like getting the right perspective, understanding structure and volume, understanding lighting, understand like getting the fundamentals, understanding anatomy. And you have like eventually like the rendering and style process to it, which we can basically say it's the filter you put on top of the fundamentals and the sketch. And you should be a perfectionist when it comes to the fundamental. Let's say if you're doing like a drawing in a style which is like even semi-realistic. I'm not talking about like when you do something that is abstract or totally not realistic. You're doing like a scene or a background for SpongeBob or I don't know what. Let's say you're doing something that is like semi-realistic. You don't want to say, oh, okay, it's okay if my perspective is off. I don't want to be a perfectionist. Your perspective should be solid in most cases. So I think like you should be a perfectionist when it comes to the fundamental of the drawing, but when it comes to the rendering, and I'm not talking about like we just talk like if you're working on a certain TV series or certain game, you actually need to also be a perfectionist in the drawing. But I'm talking if you're only drawing for yourself, you're sharing some pieces on your social media. Nobody knows how the perfect image in your mind looks like. So you can compete with yourself, which is very healthy, not competing with only with others, competing with yourself and say, it still doesn't look like the way I want it to look. But it shouldn't like prevent you from sharing it and like hearing what people think and even be proud of it. Like nobody knows like how like this end result in your mind looks like. People will get it for what it is. And like think of all the times you look like at rough sketches on Pinterest and you said, whoa, those sketches are amazing. And they weren't like very like rendered or like and sometimes even like paintings can be very loose. Maybe the artist that did this painting actually wanted to be more rendered or rendered differently, but that this is how he knows to render and you find it perfect. So I feel like, yeah, get your fundamentals down, be perfectionist about the fundamentals, and with other things, you can feel more accepting. Sure, man.
He also said he draws fundamentals like perspective and anatomy, but don't make a full character because I want to make the perfect arm, face, or clothing?
It or the perspective of anatomy, but I don't make a full character. So that actually goes back to what I was saying initially. Like, if you focus on the perfect arm, perfect face, perfect head, and like every time you're drawing the perfect part, you miss on the complete image. And when you go loose, you focus on the complete image and you don't focus on the parts. So, like, the fear of creating a complete character is like when all those pieces come together, it looks off. I can draw the perfect arm, I can draw the perfect head, but when I put everything together, it looks a little bit off. So you actually need to start from the together and not with the different parts. So let's, for example, say that instead, and again, I don't know exactly, obviously, I don't know your process, so I'm talking very in general. But let's say that if I'm drawing a character and I want this character to, change. Let's say I want the character to hold one hand right here, and I don't know what he's doing, but he's obviously doing something. And then I want this character to maybe bend a little bit here and do like a certain motion. And what I'm doing right now is like, while I'm drawing, I'm kind of like focusing on each part. Like, I'm still looking at the overall shape, but I'm thinking too much of how, for me, anyways, this is too much right now to think like how each part is looking. I'm thinking more like going off like very simple. Oh, I want the character to throw his hand here, and like I want the body to bend in this motion right here and have like this line, and maybe I want this leg to be bent and another leg to come here. So I'm trying to really be loose with my ideas at first. And maybe here I don't know, I want this arm to do something here. And I'm really trying to get like more of a gesture and more of a general feeling to what I'm doing. And like, for me, when I go like in this direction, I rarely use the eraser. Like, I can like doodle and then probably say, okay, I need to make this bigger, this smaller, and I totally use like my digital tools. I can actually, like, once I'm doodling, I can take the head and say, I really need this head like to be around here, and maybe I want it smaller or bigger. But I'm trying to stay so vague, like with the concept. And then basically when you do that, you actually get a glimpse of the total image. You can make your eyes like squint a little bit, and you can see if you like the overall flow of what you did, if you um, like the gesture and the proportion, and like how things are starting to come together. And if here you have like any problem with like the complete body, you will actually find it out like here, without like skipping to making the perfect arm or the, and then try to clean it up just a little bit. Don't go from here to the perfect result. Go from here to make, okay, maybe now I can add a little bit of anatomy, just a bit anatomy to this arm, and try to figure out how exactly do I want like this fist, in which angle do I want it to appear or whatever. Or maybe in this part you can also start maybe doing a little bit of like accessories. Maybe I want this character to have like I don't know, the Mortal Kombat thing here. So maybe you can step into creating a little bit of accessories, but see that I'm still very loose. It's still it's another layer of information, on top of what I did, but it's not like, okay, I'm stepping to rendering, and it's just another layer of information in this stage, for me, anyways. And then I will probably take the opacity down a little bit more and just clean it a little bit more, even if it takes you like there isn't any limitation. If you don't have to do it in 3 layers or in 4 layers, you can use how many layers you want and how many steps you want, and try to think of it as clay. Like you're getting, like, first of all, you're getting like a bulk of clay, and just shape it in a general direction you want to go, and then you start like putting a little bit more like details, and only in the end you kind of like really taking your tools and polishing and doing like fine details. So I feel like this will probably can get you a long way without like being stuck on getting everything super perfect at first, and not getting to creating the full body. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, that's really good advice, and a good one to elaborate a bit more on. Um, we're coming up to hour and a half mark. Do you want to do a quick review of the folks that
Yeah,
are
sure,
very
I would love
active
it.
in the canvas right now?
I would. Woo! Yeah, I love it. That's a fun one. Let's see what we got here. I like it. So for me, like, just like getting like the feeling of what you already started, because it's still like very early, but like for me, I'll try to get like the shapes and the overall shape first. So I probably won't even go into the face and different details. I would probably try to figure out my pose and the proportions that I use. And also, like, something that I want to suggest is to divide your parts to different shapes. And I'll just show for a second what I mean by that. So now I can see right now from your lines that you are approaching it with like trying to get a contour of a shape. So when you go to the body, you have those lines and you already trying to sculpt the body. Now, for me, what I would probably do is I'd probably take this body and divide it at least to two, maybe three different shapes. So the way I would look at it is I would say, okay, her torso has like this shape right here. I can even use like a circle right now or something similar. It has this shape right here. And I would probably say, okay, and like her, like hips or pelvis, they have like this shape right here. And then I will try to figure out how those shapes are connecting to one another. So I'll probably try to divide it to different parts. Um, and I think that will actually will make it easier for you to place. Because getting like trying to focus more on the contour, it's like really focusing on actually drawing from observation and try to like really get like the similarity to what you're looking at. And if all we want to do is like grab the idea out of this actually great reference. So I probably try to divide it to different parts. And yeah, as I said before, I would probably try to be more loose and try to see kind of the overall feeling that I'm getting. I also see that another thing that is very strong in her pose, it's that she pulls like her shoulder very close to the face, so her shoulder will probably be here, and I would probably this shoulder is farther, and this shoulder is like very put to the face. So I'll try to break it down and not going like only around the contours of the characters. So I think that will probably help. Great stuff. Let's see what we got going on here. I like it. So I think that sometimes, um, when I think that sometimes, especially when I see people that tend or leaning more to like anime manga style characters, in some cases we can approach like the face as being more flat than it is. And what I mean by that is like, because like a lot of features in anime are not realistic. Like let's say those eyes are not realistic, and sometimes in anime like the eyes can go big and go small. If something drops on your foot, like you can have X's, you can have like different mouths. It's like more of a symbol, it's like a language, right? But sometimes when we do that, we can actually ignore like the 3D structures of things. So it kind of maybe advice to try to keep in mind what is like solid 3D shape and what is like not realistic. So for me, when I look at this head, what I see is that like if I get like the shape, just the shape of the head, and you know what, maybe what I'm saying will actually won't fit this style. So I'm just like thinking out loud. But when I see this shape, and if I want to actually mark like the center of this face, I would probably think it's here. For me, this is that will be the center. So then I see that I have like one eye really, really close to the center, and like those eyes are not like centered in the face. So what I'm thinking is what will happen if we'll actually take the two eyes and try to center them in like correctly in the face. Maybe it will actually lose its like its magic. So it's also a possibility. Like sometimes those little tweaks are kind of like what makes things what it is. But like I think that even in like anime, like things that go with like most anime styles, like things that go with structure, are mostly kept. Um, so that's one thing. And another thing, I don't know if I imagined it's something that was done by head, like from imagination, without like copying a certain reference. Maybe there was a reference involved, but whenever people like drawing like the arms bent, uh, a lot of times they kind of miss on the proportions and the length of the arms. Like it's very easy when you draw like an arm bent to make the arms maybe longer than they should be. So it's probably something that I will kind of take a look again myself. I feel like that maybe like if this arm is actually coming to the outside, if I try to imagine it like being straight, maybe I would make it just a little bit shorter. But overall, I that's a great sketch. Really like it.
Very nice. Covered a lot of ground in the stream, huh?
Yeah. So I really like what you're going on here. You got looks really awesome. So I feel like um, one advice that I can give you is actually regarding perspective. So basically, let's say you're drawing something from imagination and you didn't establish like a perspective grid in advance, and that's totally fine. Sometimes there's no need to actually do like the vanishing points and get like the perspective grid, but there are some things that we need to be aware of when we draw anything. So regarding perspective, the first thing that I recommend to be aware of and actually think of even before you start drawing the character is think, where is the height of your camera or your view SI? In other words, where is the horizontal? How do you call it? I got like lost. I lost the word. but like when you see the horizon line. So where you see the horizon line, sorry, so where you got the horizon line not it's not only meaning that okay, this is the sky, this is the ground. The horizon line also marks the height of the viewers or the camera. And that means that everything that will go above the horizon line will be taller than the viewer's eye, and everything that goes underneath will be underneath the viewer's eye. And I already know that if I draw a box in the middle, I will look at like this. I will see it like this. If I draw a box here on top, I will see the bottom part of it. And if I'll draw a box here, I will see the top part of it. Just like knowing base of this horizon line. So if I look at like your character right here, so basically there is no like actual perspective, because like the height of the camera keeps changing. Like let's say when we look at the face, it's kind of we look at the face on eye level, but then when we look at the body, it's like I'm looking at the body a little bit from the top, but then when I look at the legs, it's like I'm looking at the legs from underneath, because I see like the pants going upwards instead of downwards. So like if the camera was really somewhere here, like close to eye level, then the belt will go like that, and but the pants will go in the other direction. They will go like downwards. And so maybe I don't know, maybe it was a different decision to make it like a circle upwards, but like it gives the wrong feeling of perspective. So that's one thing that to be aware of, like for anyone, like if you draw something, try to figure out where is your horizon line, and then like do everything in like relation to this horizon line, and know where you're going above the viewer's eye and when you're going below the viewer's eye. So this is an important one. Really like this one. Looks great. I feel like that on the girl here, it looks really stylized, but I feel like there is a little bit of structures, like a small structure issue. So just like try to be more like keep in mind the structure. Like for me, let's say that this is the center line. So I feel like that her eyes going a little bit diagonally, and like if I saw like the eye line, then I feel like this eye should go a little bit downwards. And also maybe it was like an intent to put like the mouth to the side, but I feel like that it probably just missed like the center. And so try to always keep in mind structure, even when you're doing like cartoony stuff. And we had like a discussion, like I don't remember, like a few streams back, we had a discussion about like when a style is like completely flat 2D, where you don't like when you can disregard like perspective and structure, and like when the style, even though it's a 2D art, it still like considers the perspective and volume, and then it's something that you should take note of. So great stuff. So great stuff. I really like the Ryu sketch. um I like it. So I feel like and I'm guessing right here, um but like I can see like a few patterns in the drawing that makes me feel that like a lot of stuff that you draw from memory. You probably drew them a few times, and you remember, you kind of like have probably strong visual memory, and you remember how this drawing looked like, and you can actually replicate the drawing that you saw or try to copy a few times. But I feel like that if there is will be more attention to actually the structure of shapes and how they are connecting together, that will take you a long, like it will take you much further, and it will be like a real jump in what you're doing. So I'll show a few things just to show you what I mean. So, like, I really like this Ryu sketch, and if I look at few parts like separately, then it looks really impressive, like the muscles and the anatomy. But sometimes when you look at different places, you kind of get where things are like a bit off. So let's say that if I'm just like taking the head, so I'm thinking at like his skull shape right here, and I'm looking at the angle of the skull. So this is the skull, right? Right here, and I can probably say this is the skull. And if right now, if I'll hide, um, oh, I can't hide this, but let, I won't hide it. But right now, if I look at this skull, if I want to actually connect the neck, so I'll go from the back of the head a little bit more, and probably around here, and like I feel that the neck is like it's too much forward. It's like connecting like too much forward to the character, and it actually doesn't look like it supports the back of the head. So that's something that I would probably fix a little bit. And also, if I talked about perspective, so if I'm looking like from really down below, um, I'm not sure if I would see like this top muscle right here, and if I would probably see it in both sides. And another example of like this is like in this character, the face is awesome. I really like this face. It's like so intense. So this face is great. But then you continue to the body, but the fact that the pecs, like the chest muscles, are ending here, and you already go to the abs, it's like we really compressed like his body, like his chest. So if I were to like try to sketch from here how his chest will look in this angle, it would probably we will have his rib cage over here, and if his rib cage will be here, then his chest muscle can go like very like even more down, and his abs will start like probably here, and it keeps the same angle, but it looks like more correct. So what I suggest is like try to get the structures underneath the drawing, and like try to not only map the muscles but actually placing them on top of a solid structure. Great stuff. I really like that style. That
Whoa, very
is
cool.
freaking awesome.
Nailed it.
That is freaking awesome. I really like it. I will save it. And write your name as well, and maybe your Instagram. I'll give you a shout out. That's amazing. I really like it. I appreciate it. I really, you know what? We talked about style, like this entire stream, and there are so many style decisions right here. It looks like really like retro stuff, and I really like it. That's awesome. That's great stuff. Hey, hey, what's up? So I really like what you're doing. I'm trying to figure out. You probably, as I understand, you kind of like tracing your drawing on top of the sketches, which is like great. But what I would suggest is like putting the sketch aside and try to redraw it like side by side. And if you go on top of the sketch, I would kind of give you like an exercise if you want to try. Like if you're going on top of the sketch, instead of like tracing the sketch, try to look for the shapes inside that sketch. And I'll show what I mean. So let's say like her arm is like a tube, a cylinder, right? So I'll try to figure out in which direction is this like cylinder is going. Probably is going right here, and this one is going a little bit in this direction. I'm trying to get the perspective of every little shape that's composing. Like maybe I'll try to also like the rib cage is like completely like side view, right? But I'll try to get the shapes down. And for me, that actually it's something that if you do, like I'll draw the head and I'll say where is the center line, where will be the chin, and how will it connect to the body, and different stuff like that. And I feel like that even if you trace and you actually try to get the shapes inside, what you will do is instead of like just tracing, you will actually kind of studying like the different volumes and the perspective behind everything. You kind of try to get the mannequin from that drawing, and then it will actually be more than just tracing on top of it. So it's something you can try. And if you did once, like maybe if you did like this exercise when you're trying to get the shapes down, what you can do then is takes those shapes to the side, and then try to maybe uh, redo them like from observation. But now you are not looking at the character, you are actually looking at the shapes, you're looking at something that is more like fundamental inside this character. Yeah, you are. I like it. So kind of like what I said earlier, try to like here, I would suggest to get like the structure of the head like nailed down. And there is something that I feel like some people miss when they mark the center of a face. They basically, without knowing or intending, they're making the face flat. So what I suggest on doing is like try to update the center line and try to make it go with the curves of the head. So if I'll create, like if I'm imagining this head like in 3D, so like I will go like really round here, but the eyes are dented a little bit. And then it goes again, something like that. And that can actually make a great difference, because if we look at this center line, you will see that, oh, wait a minute, my nose is supposed to be here. It's supposed to go out a little bit, and maybe my mouth goes out a little bit. Maybe one eye goes in a little bit. So try to really pay attention to the structure of it. And another thing, another advice that I will give, and that will probably be my final one before I go. But a lot of people are having like problem with connecting the neck to the head in the right place. And it's something I mentioned before, but my suggestion will be connect the head to the sphere and not to the face. What do I mean by that? So if we imagine that when we construct a head, let's say this is a head in like a profile view. So I'm thinking of the head as a sphere, the base of the skull, and then I'm putting a mask. I'm putting a mask on top of that sphere, right? So let's say I'm doing something like that. So in order to get like the neck right, don't connect the neck to the face. Connect it to the sphere. So if I'll connect the neck right now, I'll imagine it connects to the sphere and then like that. So if we look at your head, like the head you drawn here, this is the sphere, and you see like the neck is really connecting more towards the face. So I would just suggest to try to connect it to the sphere, and it will feel like that much more correct. Same thing here. It will probably look better. So great stuff, man. I really like to see what people are drawing. So that's always a pleasure. And before we finish, I just wanted to put this one on.
Definitely. Big shout out to DPO. Really great work. Really great work. Um, I love this piece. Quick question, Mountain Pirate. Did you get to panel 10 um, yet? I want to make sure before we go.
I'm not sure. No, I didn't, but I can. No problem. So yeah, I do. Oh, so I have a few panels that I missed over here. Yeah,
We
I
got
do
an
see
active
that.
class today.
Yeah, so right now I'm not seeing anything on panel 10. Maybe you switch your layers off.
Yeah, give us a quick shout out, Mountain Pirate, if you do have it somewhere else. It should be. Let's see if we can find it. Eh, there you go. I think it's there now.
Let's take a look. So for me, no, I still don't see anything on panel 10.
Oh, really? Give it a
Yes.
refresh, maybe? I see it for some reason.
Yeah. Let's do a quick refresh. No, nothing. Like you see my screen, so nothing for me on panel 10 for some reason. I do see things
Oh,
I
there's
missed in.
another 10. The numbers got mixed up. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it. There are two tens. Okay. Yeah. So here, actually, I would give you an advice. So here, what you got going on is a case where you're paying attention to the structure with like big shapes, but you kind of like let it s- run away and lose where it comes to the smaller structures. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So obviously I can see that you have like a sketch for the head and you're paying attention to the structures of different things. But when you went and created those fangs, what you did, or at least it looks like, you go duck, duck, and then boom, you got like this. I got this teeth, but like this tooth right here. If it's like a 3D structure, then it means it has volume. And if it has volume, that means that the lip should like be affected and from that volume. And maybe we can make the lip go around this teeth. And the same here. So it's kind of like here the lip is going before the tooth. So I would probably include this tooth like with the lips. So try to also take into consideration like every small shape that you put in, like everything is eventually like a 3D shape with like a style like that. So really try to take it all in mind. And I do feel like the nose for me is kind of like of a different style. So you have like this, like you went with the mouth like more detailed. You have like this mouth with the teeth and where you can see the gums and everything. So that's a cool looking mouth. But I feel like the nose is very simplified in shape, and it kind of looks like it belongs to a different style. So I'll probably go with something that is a bit more believable in that manner. Amazing. So I do have some things that I didn't I didn't see. Oh, I really like this one. So really taking the exercise and trying to do things in different styles. So I like it when things go extreme. So like going from this one, which is awesome, to this one is actually great. I really like it. Great stuff. I feel like that in some cases, the again the character will a little bit changes, and it's not, and obviously it changes in every style. But I just want to remind that it's not like only okay, my character has a long hair and it has a beard and like a bead chain. So like for me, if you go like really diagonal here, and you create like this like round nose with like this like cheeks a little bit, then it really changes the character. Like if this is your initial character, like her look is like a bit more stoic. It's not more like, it's not that intense, and it has like really like we can see the cheekbones. So I probably wouldn't like try to put like this line here that give her like a bit of fat on the cheeks. So maybe it takes it a little bit in a different direction, but that's some great stuff, great sketches. I like it. Guys, I really appreciate everyone that joined the stream. It's awesome to see those things, and everyone that is watching as well.
Yeah, just want to throw in another thank you to support that big group today. And thank you for the extra time, Udi, and going through and reviewing all of these artists. And one thing to mention for all of you participating, we're thankful for everyone's presence and participation here. And even if it's just to come and hang out, if you do want feedback, the one rule and stipulation we do have is to make sure that the artwork that you're creating is around this subject, so we can keep it focused on each major topic. So there's, I think we might have not totally gone through and done sort of a feedback revision over, and that's simply just because it's not necessarily on the subject. So no disrespect or hate for the art. We love everything that you guys are doing. So just making sure that that's clear for everybody that is listening here. And Udi, this is a really fantastic lecture as always. Thank you so much, man, for your time.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, great conversations, great topics. We will continue on the character design journey with Udi. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Keep an eye on Discord. Check out the events section, and yeah, we'll have to be patient and wait for you for 2 weeks, man.
Yeah, I'll be patiently waiting as well.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to make sure we're checking the comments. Yep. Thank you, Juki. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, DPL, for the great character study on Udi. And everybody have a great week.
Bye, guys.